Hello and welcome to the Football Hipsters English Breakfast podcast in association or in partnership with our fellow fans, our fellow kit people, that's what we'll call them. It's classicfootballshirts.co.uk. So remember, whether you're a full hipster or classic collector, they have something for you. Tonight, as usual, I am your host Chris and I'm joined by my regular cohorts of Ross and Josh. Good evening to you both.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We have a few bits and bobs to get through across technically five different competitions, I suppose. So we've got a bit of FA Cup, a bit of Premier League, and a bit of EFL as usual. So we're going to start with the FA Cup. Be warned, boys and girls, this might be a bit of a shorter show this week because there's been less games and not as many incidents. But I'm sure we'll find plenty of talking points. So let's begin with Saturday's FA Cup game then, which was Manchester City away at Middlesbrough. A 2-0 victory for Pep Guardiola's men. Wasn't really a contest for long spells. Would that be fair, Ross?
Yes, it would. I think it kind of went by the scorecard. I think it was an okay game, or at least I enjoyed the bit I saw of it while it was 0-0, and then kind of as soon as Man City went up inside 3 minutes, I thought, right, here we go. And from then on, Man City just kind of took control. I don't think Middlesbrough really proved enough to Man City. They certainly had their chances, but clearly they've had some goal-scoring issues this season, didn't take them again this time. And I don't think Man City were ever too worried. It was just a kind of a matter of time until the second one went in, which it did in the second half. So, yeah, it was a bit of an average game. It kind of felt after a while that no one really wanted to be there once Man City had just started kind of passing it around and keeping the possession and killing the game off. So, yeah, it was one of those, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely comfortable for long spells. Josh, what did you make of City? Were you more impressed with what they are? Were you more disappointed in what Middlesbrough had to offer? Because they didn't have to offer very much, did they? They were very limited, and I still can't help but think that their Premier League form is going to be much the same. They can't score goals, can they? So which side of the coin did you fall on in impressive or not impressive?
Yeah, I don't think Middlesbrough are really offering anything at the moment with their... they're not really threatening, and especially in a cup competition where getting goals is, what you need to do to progress through. You can't draw your way into the final. It's just, a case of Man City going through the motions and almost kicking away the blind man's stick. It wasn't really a contest because Middlesbrough are only scoring in binary at the moment. There's either one goal or no goals.
It's a bit of a worry, isn't it, for them? Because they've got these two big lumps up front, but they're not really utilising them. I can't help but think not playing Jordan Rhodes was an interesting choice of tactic. What would you make of the resurgence of David Silva recently at Manchester City? Because he's always been a player that's people have rated. He's always been a very good footballer. He scored the opener after 3 minutes, and he had a hand in. I think he had a hand in Aguero's second. He's been very good of late. He's been very, very decent, sort of popping up at the right times, and obviously assists and goals. Is he sort of still a player you think has got a big part to play in Guardiola's future plans? Because he's not getting any younger, but seems to be getting better as the games go by.
Yeah, I think he's one of those midfielders that could go on forever. Also evergreen because of the way that he plays the game. It's all about smart movement and ensuring that when you collect the ball, you've already got the space you need. He's never really had the pace to take a man on, but with a clever 1-2 can always break through the lines. And I think that experience, and he's a player that fits a Pep system. Very, very good technically. I don't think there's a better player in that City squad, really, that is technically as good as David Silva. So I think whilst he's still fit, he should certainly be part of Pep's plans.
Just certainly, as you say, technically, he certainly suits that system. He's one player that people generally like to watch. with one thing I have to say, Claudio Bravo kept a clean sheet, but still managed to trend on Twitter. I noticed. I think it's fair to say he's not convinced many people. And speaking of not convinced, Ross, Aitor Karanka. We'll remember back to last season when he was in the Championship. He had a few things to say. Was it Blackburn? I think he just walked out, didn't he, after the game, and was very critical earlier on this season of the atmosphere at the Riverside Stadium. It would appear he's kind of mentioned the same thing again. You've got a quote from yesterday after the game for us.
After the game yesterday, he said the past 2 games were awful for us. I was a bit concerned about the atmosphere when they scored the first goal so quickly. I'm not saying that was a particularly bad or harsh quote this time around, because he certainly said worse things about the crowd and the atmosphere at the Riverside, but I think he's just got to stop mentioning it, hasn't he? It's just unnecessary pressure. It's a bit stupid to continue to hang on about this. He's put himself in a position with the fans now that if they go down, I don't think anyone's going to really want to keep him on. The fans are kind of getting frustrated with the continued digs at their quality, especially when the quality on the pitch hasn't been that good, especially in comparison to last season. So, yeah, it's not like he really went for it this week, but it just seems silly to just keep mentioning it. Just leave him to it and get your heads down and carry on working, because you're in real danger of going down.
Yeah, agreed. Does strike me as one of those that could come to a bit of a sticky end. Whether it be sooner rather than later, we shall have to see. But speaking of sticky ends, we'll move on to the next game, which obviously Arsenal and the manager Arsene Wenger has been under a bit of stick after a sticky end to a very sticky week, or it could have been potentially anyway, as Arsenal welcomed Lincoln in the other quarter-final on Saturday. Josh, it ended up in a fairly comprehensive, straightforward 5-0 victory. Not a huge amount to be said, really, of the game in itself. I mean, obviously Arsenal were impressive in spells. A poor first half, Theo Walcott opening the scoring just before half-time seemed to kill Lincoln's spirit a little bit. Further goals from Giroud, Sanchez, Ramsey, and an own goal from Waterfall sealed the result. What's the story going to be about, though? The result for Arsenal, the process that obviously we're continuing outside the ground pre-game, or will it still be about plucky Lincoln, who obviously got this far and ultimately just came up against a side that were much better in the end?
So I think the story that should be talked about should be Lincoln, but whether or not it's going to be, I very much doubt it, as it doesn't sell as many papers as the unrest Arsenal seems to at the moment. But as you say, Lincoln went into the game. I think the Cowley brothers said that they were going to approach each segment as, or part of the game as, 10 mini games. And I think after the first 20 minutes, that tactic didn't really work for them in the end, because I think they just burnt themselves out a little too early. And once they kind of got mentally fatigued, you could then see the holes appearing in their defence, and Theo Walcott just making sure that, he got the goal. And that's what we really need to do at that level, is just make sure for a cup competition, get the goal. And, the longer that Lincoln had a clean sheet, I think the more confidence they would have had, and just to make sure you get that done before half time just ensures that the second half is going to be a lot easier. I have to say there were still some very interesting tackles going in, a lot like Arsenal saw at Sutton United in the last round, but nobody came out harmed in the end, so I think that's okay from that perspective. But all credit to Lincoln, and I think they've thoroughly enjoyed their time in the FA Cup. They've earned a lot from it, which will then go into infrastructure. And even Arsene Wenger spent over an hour with the Cowley brothers post-game just having a chinwag. And I think that's the kind of thing that you want to hear in football, that, it's more than just the game. It's the things that happened outside. And for those guys to come from semi-professional football and to have even the chance to be at the same table, or even, the closest they'd normally get to Arsene Wenger or the Emirates would be if they're sitting in the stands, to be on the touchline with him and going toe-to-toe is just absolutely incredible story.
Yeah, some really sort of nice things said about the Cowley brothers, and some very nice things said from their behalf on to Arsene Wenger. I believe they were very complimentary of the time he gave them and the interesting things he was able to share from his managerial experience. Ross, twofold question to you. Does sort of Arsenal's season, does even Arsene Wenger's management career, which sounds like an absolutely balmy thing to say, does it hinge on Arsenal potentially winning this FA Cup? We've been here twice before, where Arsene Wenger has won an FA Cup and it sort of saved his skin with a top four finish as well. And those dissenting voices have sort of gone, okay, fine, we'll see how it goes. It does seem like it's a bit more vehement, even though the protest march is a dividing opinion, I think it's fair to say. So what's your viewpoint on what this holds for Arsene Wenger and Arsenal's future, and also maybe just share your thoughts on some interesting punditry during BT Sports coverage of this game? I don't know if you have a view on that.
I think you'll have a better view on it than I will. The Arsene Wenger situation, I think that this is a competition now that Arsenal have to win, because if they don't, or if at least they don't make the final, I think the wolf is at his door regardless, but it will be chewing through it if they don't win the FA Cup. I think the fan mood to me feels very different. I've been properly into football for about 8 years now, I took a punt at, and for at least the last 6 or 7, the tide has seemed to have turned against Arsene Wenger, and you've got, every season there's a new reason for a handful more fans to get on his back. This year feels very different. This year feels quite fatigued. That's the impression I get from the fan base. And I think that if they don't win the FA Cup, then it will reach a fever pitch. I don't think he has too much more that he can say to Arsenal fans to keep his job. Top 4 is a must as well, but it's a very tough top 5, 6 this year, and you've got other teams like Everton that are prowling on the outside, so that's difficult. I think the FA Cup is a major competition for Arsenal at the moment, and like I say, if he doesn't win it, or if at the very least doesn't make the final, then I just don't see how the fan reaction is going to allow him to stay. As for the punditry, like I say, I'm sure you have much better views on this than I do, but it was a little strange. I'll give it that much. They didn't really seem to mind the idea of Lincoln City players tweeting about how they were going to kick Sanchez up in the air, etc. So yeah, I mean, as a non-Arsenal fan, I didn't invest too much into it, but there were certainly some strange comments floating around.
Yes, Chris Sutton. I'm gonna be careful here what I say, because I'm trying to remain impartial. I think he's a bit of an attention seeker. I think he knows how to provoke comment, shall we say, much in the same way that certain radio stations that might have talk and sport in their name tend to garner attention, shall we say. But nevertheless, they're his views. All I can say is I'm quite glad that Arsenal made him quite miserable in the end. Moving on, though, Arsenal go through, Manchester City go through, as we said. So those two are the first names into the hat. We skip on to Sunday. And obviously Millwall were arriving at White Hart Lane to face Tottenham Hotspur on the Sunday fixture. Now, being genuine here, I haven't seen this game. I had a game of my own in Sunday League, unfortunately, so I am yet to catch up on this. I did see the first 2 goals, which were very, very good, from Christian Eriksen and particularly Heung-min Son. Josh, was this as straightforward as it sounded? I mean, it did seem to me like Spurs basically rocked up, kind of took all in front of them, and left. And Millwall, barring there was a little bit of trouble, I think, but by and large it was just men against boys, from what I can gather. Is that fair, or was there a bit more to it than that?
I think, the claws of the Lions were really trimmed. They weren't that effective against Tottenham, but you've got to also put out that Tottenham put out a very, very strong team against what is, although a very good League One side, still a League One side, and I think Tottenham were just ruthless, and I think they were unfortunate to lose Harry Kane to an innocuous injury, but once Christian Eriksen came on, I think the complexion of the game completely changed. I think the main story from this will actually be the Harry Kane injury, how they deal with that, whether or not Heung-min Son takes up the role of being the striker, or whether or not they look at Vincent Janssen, who got his first goal in open play for the club since joining. So it was good for him to get that, kind of break that duck rather than from the penalty spot. but it is worrying for Spurs' season if this Harry Kane injury turns out to be season long, because it wasn't great. He's basically tried to pull a ball back, and as he's done so, defender has come through him and just kind of rolled his ankle. So it's the whole weight of Harry Kane plus the defender helping it roll over, and he didn't look. It looked like he was in quite a lot of discomfort at the time. So we'll have to see, and it'll probably come out later today or tomorrow, the extent of how bad that injury is.
I actually suspect it'll be Dele Alli that goes up top if he's out, because Dele Alli's a bit more of a hold-up player, I think, than some of the other players they've got available to them. I reckon it'll be Ali up top with Heung-min Son and Eriksen behind. I suspect that's probably the likeliest one, unless they put a lot of faith in Janssen. I know he scored today, but he did also miss a pretty easy chance, near enough an open goal. So it's difficult to know, but I have a sneaky suspicion it might be Ali up top.
I think when Kane came off, that was the system that they moved to, that Ali went up top with Son, Son and Eriksen in behind
And you got Winks as well, of course, who can play a little bit higher up. He was a bit deeper today, but he can also play in a front three, for example. So I reckon personally they've got more than enough creative midfielders to cover Ali's loss, so they'll probably move him up top. That's what I reckon, but it depends entirely on how much faith they want to put in Janssen at this point.
He left the stadium in a protective boot, which isn't as big a deal as people sort of often think, because obviously it's the first thing they do to immobilise the injury. But there is early reports that it could be a season ender. Obviously, as you rightly say, if you look at the replay, he went heavily over on all that weight on the ankle. How does this affect the season, do you think, Ross? If it does happen, I mean, yes, it's all right saying you can put Ali up front and move, Heung-min Son centrally, but the simple facts are Spurs struggled for long periods of the season when they didn't have Kane, getting the goals. He has been on a hot streak of late. How much could this potentially derail their season if he is out? Because at the moment, they're fighting on that front of getting into the Champions League, and, a couple of bad results, people will question it.
They will. I think the fact they're still only in the FA Cup and the Premier League, I think is going to be beneficial to them. If they were still in the Europa League, then the squad may be a bit too stretched. But I reckon on two fronts, especially with the FA Cup played on the weekend, I think they'll be okay. But clearly they need to make sure they get the balance right up front. Like I say, Harry Winks has kind of broken out the past couple of months, but he can still play along a front three with perhaps Ali as a target man, quote unquote. So I reckon they've got enough options to carry them through this time. I think they're more prepared for it. But at the same time, Harry Kane is still a loss. You're almost guaranteed a goal in a game, whether it's he that scores it or if it's him that lays the ball off, creates the space, whatever. So he will be a massive miss. And clearly, with a semi-final coming up, possibly against Arsenal, as a lot of people are starting to speculate, he could be an even bigger miss when those kinds of games come around. But at the same time, I think they've got the talent there. I think they've got the quality there. It's just a case of getting the balance right.
Yeah, some good points well made. But nevertheless, Spurs get through. So that's Arsenal, Spurs and Manchester City into tomorrow's FA Cup semi-final draw, which are held at Wembley. Sigh. Chelsea, Manchester United. We're not going to preview the game because we could be here all night. I'm simply going to ask you, Chelsea or Man United. Ross?
Chelsea.
And Josh?
Chelsea, as Ibra is out.
I think Man United. Weird, huh? I don't know why. There's nothing to back that opinion up. Maybe it's hope rather than anything else. But I have a sneaking suspicion Mourinho might pull a special on that one. But we shall see. So yes, that will be the semi-final lineup when we know who gets through that tie as well. So that's the FA Cup ties done and dusted until our semi-finals come up, which I think is in about a month's time. So let's move on to the Premier League. And Ross, let's start with you this time. Bournemouth. Interesting tweet from the West Ham social media lounge yesterday where they rocked up away to Bournemouth. This was West Ham away at Bournemouth. What was it they said? Off to
Time
crush
to squash
some
the cherries.
That's the one, which Bournemouth replied at full-time with simply squashed, because they won 3-2, and they did it despite missing not one but two penalties. This game had a little bit of everything, didn't it? 3-2 victory for Eddie Howe's men, and a vital victory. First one this year, isn't it?
Yes, it is. First of the calendar year. It's massive win, really is, because I know West Ham haven't been fantastic this year, and they certainly weren't on the day, but it was a tough fixture going into it. I think clearly a lot of pressure would have been put on that back line across the 90 minutes because we know it's a bit dodgy since they lost Nathan Ake. But at the same time, it was the West Ham back line that I thought was even worse. I know I will sound like I'm revelling in someone else's misery here, but Jose Font has been so poor since he's gone to West Ham. It's been staggering to see how badly he's dropped off. He hasn't been great for Southampton this season, but his former West Ham has been really poor, and the reactions on social media to him giving away, especially the second penalty, and he was at fault for the first one as well. Josh King turned him. It was a fantastic finish from Josh King, but he's turned him far too easily. The reactions on social media to Jose Font are amazing, but it was West Ham that looked like they had the defensive problems in this one, and full credit to Josh King, who missed the first penalty, still ended up scoring a hat-trick. He didn't give up. He clearly wanted this more than anyone, and when you miss 2 penalties in a game and you go down, as they did 1-0 to Mikel Antonio, it's very easy to think, right, the world's against us, are we really going to win this? But full credit to Bournemouth, they completely balled up their fists, and much like they wouldn't have in the Championship, they just kind of said, no, we're just going to keep working and we're going to keep going, and they did, and it was a fantastic result in the end. It's a game that belonged in the Championship, really, for its high levels of goals and crazy incidents.
Yeah, it really, really was. Just on that sort of same subject, Josh, do you think Bournemouth still have anything to worry about? Is this? It seems silly to say, is this result enough? Because it is just one result ultimately. But is this enough to sort of see Bournemouth over the line? Do you think, or are they still going to need 1 or 2 more victories for the end of the season? Do you think?
I think they still do need a couple more victories. I think it was when Afobe and you've also got Callum Wilson out at the moment. Everyone was a bit, questioning where the goals would come from. Because I think Stanislas is also out at the moment. So it's one of those that Bournemouth did have that problem that defensively they were okay, but couldn't score goals. And now it seemed to have turned on its head. And Josh King, with his emergence of getting on the score sheet regularly now, I think will be enough if they can continue him scoring. But I think they still need a couple more points, and once they get to that hallowed land of 40 points, they're only 10 points off that at the moment. I think then we can truly say that they're safe, because the way that pack of 6 or 7 teams is at the moment, you could only really say that one of those is nailed on, maybe 2, and it could be any of the rest that take that last spot.
Yeah, agreed. I think they, as you say, they probably need 1 more victory, maybe 2, but it depends on other results, of course. That's the main kind of issue on that one. It's hard to predict, but nevertheless, a good win for Bournemouth. We will skip past Everton, West Brom, mainly because we've got a question on Everton at the end, so we can maybe go into them in a little bit more depth. But I'm sure Ross is pleased that Morgan Schneiderlin was one of the scorers in this game. Kevin Morales for the opener, and Romelu Lukaku scoring his customary goal against the lesser side. I'm joking. People take me so seriously. But no, credit where credit's due. He notched as well. With 8 minutes to go, I think it's fair to say that Tony Pulis' men have maybe taken the foot off the gas a little since becoming safe. I'm sure they'll be fit and firing when Arsenal come knocking next.
It's his 300th game in charge, though, Tony Pulis. 300th game in charge of a Premier League team, and he's never finished inside the top 10 as a manager. So
300 caps, do you reckon? See what I did there?
Very good.
Yes, I mean, credit where credit's due. To have West Brom, let's be honest, safe at this stage of the season is an achievement in itself. And I think they're going to be a busy club in the summer, West Brom. They've got a bit of money, haven't they, about them? So it'd be interesting to see if Tony Pulis is the man to stick behind that new project or not. I think he probably will be. I didn't think he would be a while ago, but I'm changing my mind slightly. So, yeah, it'd be one to keep an eye on.
I would be surprised if he is still there by the end of the next season, put it that way.
Another season after this, and then
I don't think he can. If they get into Europe, then I think that will be the last bit, because I don't think he'd be able to take them any further. They do have an aging back line, which they do need to deal with. To give him Macaulay a 1-year deal, but if I remember rightly, he's the oldest outfield player in the league at the moment. It's either him or Peter Crouch. Certainly one of them. I think he's 38 at the moment. But he'll lose that crown when Brighton come up and Bruno's at right back. He'll be basically 40.
Confidence for you. I like it.
Yeah. I think, as you say, there'll be a lot of movement at West Brom, especially with the players that they've managed to bring in, and we might see some more, you say, odd signings. I think Chadley was a surprise to go there. Maybe Tony Pulis can get something out from under his hat again.
See what you did there. Very clever. Yes, yeah, definitely one to keep an eye on in the summertime. And the only other Saturday game, this was quite a big one. I'll stick with you, Josh, because it was kind of a 6-pointer. I don't know, it's a bit of a cliche maybe to say, but nevertheless, it was a very big game for both sides. And Hull City, who some people have questioned Marco Silva recently, because obviously he came in with a blaze of glory. And I think a lot of people maybe went a bit too far. I still stand by the fact I think he's an excellent coach, and I still think it's a coup that Hull City have got him. But a few people have maybe turned their nose up a bit recently and said, well, what's he actually done apart from a couple of cup wins? Well, he got a big victory in this game. Umam Niasse, the man who Everton could never love, apparently, got both goals in the space of, 12 minutes? No, 20 minutes was it? So, actually, no, it was 12 minutes. I was right the first time. And a late goal back for Alfie Mawson, who's making a bit of a habit of scoring goals. But yeah, big victory this for Hull, isn't it? Because it just brings Swansea back into that mix and pushes Hull that little bit further up. So bigger result for Hull to win it, or will Swansea now start to question themselves again, do you think, Josh?
I think it is a very important win for Hull. The fact that Marco Silva has come out after the game and said that the cake on pitch just isn't helping him at the moment, because they share it with the local rugby team who played on it the day before. So I think from what we've seen from Marco Silva in his short time at Hull and from his career elsewhere, is he does like his teams to quote unquote play football, keep it on the ground. And when you've got a pitch that's been rucked up the day before, it's not going to help him try and get his plans and get the team playing the way he wants. It's just worrying for Swansea that they didn't get a win here. But I think it's, as you say, it was that cliched 6-pointer, and there's always a team that's going to be rather unhappy about the result if they don't win. I think Swansea probably still have enough to stay up, but as I've said before and earlier, that it is very, very tight down there, and I don't think you can call who's going to take that last spot at the moment.
It is definitely one of those that it's hard to judge, like you say, who's gonna get the points sort of needed, and it is all getting very, very close and very squeaky bum. Ross, do you have any thoughts around this game? And it's, as I say, Swansea have been very, very good since Paul Clement has come in, and definitely have improved, but they will have looked at this game because they dominated for large spells and didn't get anything from it. So is that the bigger issue, or is it just the fact that they haven't got any points full stop from the game?
Well, for them it'll be the points, but I think them dominating the ball was as much Hull's plan as it was Swansea's, because Marco Silva likes to essentially let the opponents have the ball so they can spring load on them on a counter-attack. So I don't think it would have mattered to Hull at all to see the possession stats go Swansea's way. Eventually, I think the quality of the counter-attacking from Hull just kind of won out. I do agree that the state of the pitch doesn't help the way he plays. He is a very quick counter-attacking minded manager, and I think against a team like Swansea it was a very good approach. Swansea committing a few men forward and then catching them cold on the counter. I still reckon Swansea will be safe. If I was to if I was to pick my bottom three this week, Swansea wouldn't be in it. Neither would Hull, but I think the thing is with Hull is that as well as Marco Silva's doing with them, I don't think the squad is of the necessary quality to play his style for too much longer with the same level of success that they've had. If he stays on in the summer, he's going to need to completely revamp at least 6 or 7 positions, not just in the first team, but on the bench as well. So I am still worried for Hull. I think that they'll have enough at this point, but at the same time, it really wouldn't surprise me if they didn't, because, like I say, they just don't have the quality that he needs all over the field. So it's a massive result for Hull, but they still need at least, I think, 3, 4, 5 wins to just guarantee it, because the teams above them, I think, are more likely to pick up points from their final few games.
Yeah, very, very fair point. And that leads us nicely to the wrap-up of the Premier League games with the game on Sunday, which was Liverpool coming from behind to beat Burnley by 2-1. Wasn't straightforward. I'll stick with you, Ross. Ashley Barnes putting Burnley in front in this one. It's Gino Wijnaldum though got the equaliser right on half time. Can't help but think that had a big say in the turnaround, which ultimately was secured when Emre Can, after my criticism last week, knocked in the goal on the hour mark to get the winner. Burnley, I mean, are they safe, do you think? Is there any doubt at all that they could be sucked in? I mean, they got 31 points as I look at the table now. Is there any danger for them? You look at sort of likes of Watford, Leicester, Crystal Palace, Middlesbrough, Sunderland, they've all got a game in hand. Is it safe to say they're okay, or should we maybe reserve that judgment for the time being?
I'd still be quite confident saying they'll be fine, but I've been saying that all season, so I'm possibly not the best man to ask. However, if you're a neutral and you're looking at it, then Burnley are the team in free fall. They haven't won in 5 now. They don't get any points away from home. I think they've only accrued 1 point away from home or something silly like that, haven't they? And all their fixtures that they get points from are at home, which can't go on forever because eventually a team will figure out how to do it. They did do pretty well against Liverpool. The Wijnaldum goal was absolutely massive, and you can't really do much about Chan's goal because he's hit that so well. They did also have their chances as the game went on, though. Last minute they had a very good chance, which they've just put over. So I still reckon Burnley will be safe. I think they've got a lot more backbone than some of the teams beneath them, but you can't guarantee it. You know, you can't take anything for granted. I don't think Sean Dyche will, which is again part of the reason I think they'll stay up, because they've just got that backbone that I think a couple of clubs beneath them just don't have.
Yeah. I think I've pretty much inclined to agree with every word of that. Anything further that you would want to add on this one, Josh, either from a Liverpool perspective? In fact, yeah, let's look at it from a Liverpool perspective, because they've had a pretty horrible 2017, or had up until Arsenal rocked into town, standard. But that's a couple of wins on the spin for them. The Klopp train is back in operation, 3 wins from the last 5 now. Takes them 5 points clear of Arsenal, albeit the Gunners have 2 games in hand back in 5th. So it leaves Liverpool in the top 4. If they don't win, if they don't achieve a place in the top 4, will it be a season of transition or a season of failure for Jurgen Klopp? I know it's a bit harsh, but that is what the supporters demand at Anfield.
I think fundamentally, I don't think it is harsh to say, with the amount of time that Klopp's had at the club now, that it would be a failure to not get into the top 4. They didn't have European football this season, so that didn't come into it. They just had a squad that could work on it, a bit like Leicester did last year, where they just knew what they were getting. They were out of the cup competitions not that early. They still had a good go in them, getting to the semis, and I believe it wasn't the quarterfinals. They got knocked out to Wolves, didn't they, in the FA Cup a couple of rounds ago. But they have shown that they want to fight on more than one front, but I think they've got a difficult period coming up, as does Pep Guardiola with Man City, and they play each other at the weekend. It's coming up, and I think that is a make or break game for both teams for how they're going to approach the rest of the season.
I think Klopp said he wants a busy window as well, doesn't he? He wants to have 4 or 5 more players in the next window, and I kind of question if he deserves to get 4 or 5 in, because he's had 3 windows now. You know, it's a lot of time.
There's also a bit of a problem that Liverpool have anyway, is they do like to bring in and take out a lot of players. There's always a lot of movement in the transfer window, and I think that's something that's demanded by the fans, is that they always bring in people. I think it's been to the detriment of some other clubs above them with the prices that they're paying. They are inflating the market when they go out and pay, was it 25-30 million for Lallana to Southampton? They are very prone to doing that, and especially giving very big wages as well, that it does affect other teams with the business that they're trying to do, with the way that they inflate the market by overpaying and giving large wage packages to players who generally wouldn't be worth that at bigger clubs.
Yeah, it is an interesting one, because Liverpool always been that side that you don't feel they've made a massive signing of late, and you do feel that maybe something like that would be something they would look at in the summer if the money is there, like a marquee signing. I think the last one they were in for, funny enough, was Alexis Sanchez, that they didn't end up getting, so it'd be interesting to see what happens there. And of course how much they're going to pay Southampton for Manuel Gabbiadini, because we all know that's inevitably going to happen. Soz. Right. Okay, well, let's leave the Premier League chat there then for another week. We will just quickly run down the Premier League table after the few results we had this weekend. Should say West Ham lost at home to Chelsea on Monday after recording last week. I'm sure everyone's aware of that by now, which means that Chelsea, Conte's men, are indeed top of the table, 66 points from 27 played, which leaves them 10 points clear of Spurs on the same games played on second. Manchester City are joint second, technically third, 56 points as well. And then there's a bit of a gap of a point to Liverpool, who are in fourth, and then a 5-point gap to Arsenal, as we said, with 2 games in hand on 50 points, with Manchester United 49, Everton 47 in the top 7 places. West Brom, Stoke and Southampton make up the top 10, with West Ham 11th, Burnley 12th, Watford 13th and Bournemouth up to 14th with that victory. Very important victory looking at the bottom half, because Leicester, who have a game in hand, we said 27 points. Swansea stay on 27 points in 16th. Crystal Palace 25 from their 17th from their 27 played. And then you've got Hull, just close that gap, only a point behind now, 28 played, 24 points. Middlesbrough second bottom, looking really ominous now for them, 22 points, although a game in hand. And then bottom, Sunderland, still looking ominous for them as well, 19 points from their 27 played for them. Looking ahead to the next round of fixtures, which I think I'm right in saying is the last lot of fixtures before... Actually, no, we've got an international break next week, haven't we? It is next week. I'm sure it is. No, it's not. No, I'm telling you lies. We've got one more round of fixtures, then we've got an international break. See, I'm trying to invent international breaks now. What am I doing? So next week we've got West Brom Arsenal is the early game. That's on the Saturday. Crystal Palace host Watford. Everton play Hull. Stoke host Chelsea. Sunderland play Burnley. That's a big one. West Ham Leicester, equally big. Bournemouth Swansea, wow. Middlesbrough Manchester United doesn't get any easier for Karanka's men on the Sunday. The 2:15 game is Spurs Southampton, and Manchester City Liverpool rounds us off on Sunday. That's a massive game as far as the hunt for the top 4 goes. Just before we leave the Premier League behind, Ross Craig Shakespeare has been given the Leicester job. Still doesn't sit right with me. Still not very comfortable with it. Yes, indeed. He slimed his way into the hot seat. Sorry, Leicester fans. But yeah, what do you make of that appointment? Kind of a bit obvious, really, wasn't it, in the end? I think we all saw it coming after the 2 results he got.
Yeah, I'm still a little undecided whether or not I like it, but at the same time, he's had 2 very good results with them. He knows the players, he knows the system that they want to be playing in. I think he'll do fine. You know, he's got it to the end of the season. I don't think he'll be kept on after the end of the season. I think the ownership will want to reinvest in a manager that they reckon can put them back inside at least the top 6. I don't think they'll get that high again, but I think that's what the ownership will be looking at. So I don't expect him to hang on to the job past the summer, but I think it's a good stopgap in the meantime.
Yeah, can't help but wonder if the talk of Roy Hodgson is what scared them away. But yes, Shakespeare has been approved, and Leicester continue their fight up the table. So we'll see how that all ends up. Right, that's Premier League done then. It's over to you, Ross, for this week's EFL chat. What has been going on? We've had a midweek round as well, haven't we?
We have. I'm not going to go through all the fixtures midweek because there was so much to go through on the weekend, but certainly if you haven't seen the table lately, I would go and check it out on all 3 of our divisions. Starting at League 2, then we're going to start with Colchester 0, Portsmouth 4, which is a massive result for both teams. That knocks Colchester clean out of the playoff places, but puts Portsmouth up to 3rd now. They are 4 points clear of 4th place Stevenage. The reason they're now up to 3rd is because the Charlie Wyke hangover is still going on for Carlisle. They lost 3-0 at home to Cambridge and are now down to 5th. So suddenly their promotion place looks even shakier than normal, and their playoff place is really under a lot of strain now because there's a lot of teams queuing up to sneak in as we get to the closed season. We did also have a managerial sacking in League 2 this week, with bottom club Newport getting rid of Graham Wesley. Immediately reaped some benefits because they did get a very important 2-1 win over Crewe Alexandra. I'd still say that Newport are probably one of the teams that are going to go down, but that's a very big set of 3 points, and depending on how obviously the rebound goes now they've lost their manager, who knows. I'm not going to go through all these results, but Stevenage, Mansfield and Blackpool are big movers and shakers in the playoff places now. All 3 had mixed results this weekend, but they are now all involved in that picture, and Stevenage now all the way up to 4th, which is a fantastic run from Stevenage. Has gone completely under the radar. In League One, the obvious story is Scunthorpe United. They were 2-0 up against Gillingham going into, I think, about the 80th minute, something in and around that, and then they conceded a hat-trick of penalties to their ex-player Josh Wright to lose 3-2 away to Gillingham, which now puts them all the way down to 5th. I can't remember the number of games now they haven't won in. I think it's somewhere around 7 or 8, but they are on a terrible run and are in absolute freefall. They did at one point seem to have second place locked down, but they're now 3 points off of Fleetwood in second, and Fleetwood have still got a game in hand on them as well. So Scunthorpe's position in the playoffs also looking shaky. Speaking of Fleetwood Town 2, Bolton Wanderers 4 was a massive game for the top two. Bolton have a game in hand still, but they now close the gap to a single point. So I think the playoffs would still be incredible for Juve Rosslers Fleetwood, but they would still clearly like to go up automatically, but that's a big blow against a top-tier rival. And the other big story from League One this weekend was Peterborough 1, Oxford 2. The reason that's a big story isn't really so much for the result, but Craig McHale-Smith, who you might remember was absolutely lethal for Peterborough back in the day. He then left for Brighton and picked up a few injuries, had a few loan spells, including back at Peterborough. This weekend he scored his 100th goal for Peterborough, 6 years after scoring his 99th. I imagine that's a record distance between 99th and 100th goal, but there you go. Fantastic story for Craig McHale-Smith, who was lethal when I was a fan of Southampton in League One, and obviously his injuries have kept him off the pitch since then, but fantastic story for him nonetheless. Into the Championship then. Really enjoyable weekend of the Championship for me. We're going to start with, I think, the biggest story of the weekend, because we can't ignore it. Alex Neil finally got the chop. I knew I wasn't crazy. I know.
Sorry.
I know. It deserves it, fully deserves it, because I've been saying for weeks now, thinking I can't comment on it anymore, because as much as I think he's going to go, I can't keep saying it. Finally, he's gone. And it almost reaped some benefits this weekend, because they did lead Blackburn Rovers 1-0 very early on with Cameron Jerome goal in the 19th minute, I should say. Game changed about 2 minutes later when Mitchell Dykes got himself sent off. I think he's been fantastic, Mitchell Dykes, on loan from Ajax, but unfortunately he did turn the game when he got himself sent off, and Blackburn ended up scoring 2 goals. I thought that Tony Mowbray's undefeated streak as Blackburn Rovers manager would go on. It did, but kind of not in the way he'd hoped when Cameron Jerome got a late equaliser as well. So there you go. Big result for Blackburn, but I think Norwich will be a little bit disappointed. I can't remember who Alan Irvine, who's currently in caretaker charge of Norwich, took off when the red card came, but the fans weren't happy. I believe they were chanting "You don't know what you're doing" when he made that substitute, so I imagine Alan Irvine will not be taking that job full time. Clearly the rumour is Gary Rowett. Aston Villa 2, Sheffield Wednesday 0 is a big result, not just for Aston Villa, who've been on a fantastic run lately, but Sheffield Wednesday are now in real danger of slipping out of the top 6, because Fulham closed the gap now to 2 points. They also have a game in hand over Sheffield Wednesday, but Fulham closed the gap after a 3-1 away win at Newcastle, which was incredible in itself, made more incredible by the fact that their young flying left-back Ryan Sessegnon, who's been turning a lot of heads this season, scored 2 goals, and late in the game they were awarded a penalty for them. Everyone thought Ryan Sessegnon would be allowed to take it, except Tim Ream stepped up to take it instead. Apparently, Slavisa Jokanovic told Ream to go and take it. Can't believe he's not getting more stick for that, because Ryan Sessegnon is 16 years old, chance to get a hat-trick against Newcastle United. I can't believe that he wasn't allowed to take that. Tim Ream duly missed the penalty, so bizarre incident. Thankfully for Jokanovic, Fulham won, so no one's questioning it, but I refuse to let that go, because that was just rude, frankly. Barnsley 1, Ipswich Town 1, good point for Ipswich, but Barnsley again will have been hoping for all 3. Brentford 0, Huddersfield Town 1 is a big result for the top 3, because that means with the game in hand, Huddersfield have now closed the gap on Brighton to 6 points, so that's a bit concerning, I would suggest, for Brighton fans, who nonetheless are now level on points with Newcastle at 77. Brighton managed to get a 3-0 win on the Friday, by the way, with a very nice win over Derby County. Cardiff 1, Birmingham City 1. Birmingham in all kinds of trouble, really are. They only managed to get that point after an 89th minute equaliser from Lukas Jukovic. Burton 1, Nottingham Forest 0 puts them in real relegation trouble as well. Preston North End with one of the shocking results of the weekend, 3-0 home winners over Reading. Their playoff place still not out of the running now. They are on 56 points with a 6-point gap, I think, off the top of my head. Yeah, 6-point gap to the playoff places. They could do it. weirder things have happened, but I don't think they'd win the playoffs, but what a story it would be. Wigan with a really damaging defeat to Bristol City, 1-0 win for Bristol City. I think they sacked their assistant manager before their midweek fixture this week, which was a bit of an ominous sign for Lee Johnson, but a big win for Bristol City. And we round off with a 1-0 win for Wolverhampton Wanderers over Rotherham. So, talking points. Let's start with Alex Neil, because we can't not. Josh, would you agree with me that this was expected, or do we still have to say, considering he held out this long, that it's a shock?
I think it's weird. I think we got to the point where we all kind of assumed, okay, fine, he's got this far, he must be in charge for the rest of the season. And from what's come out, or what I've read, it's a very strange reason why he's been sacked, and it's not for results on the pitch, but for the potential transfer dealings that he wanted to do in the summer. I think there was talks of him wanting to get rid of Wes Hoolahan, who's been a wonderful servant for Norwich City, but is the wrong side of 30. So there is a need, and I assume he's on quite a lot of money, that they could get in a younger, more promising player. They've also got someone like Alex Pritchard, who I think would favour that role in behind the striker. But in general, I think the Norwich board had lost faith with Alex Neil's ability to make decent transfer dealings after people like Naismith coming in and not really doing the job that would be expected of them. Although he did start very, very quickly, very well for them. I think he just then dropped off and looked very uninterested towards the end of last season's campaign when they went down.
Yeah, I did read this week that Ed Balls, I think, is now one of the majority shareholders, or one of the chairmen, or whatever his stature is in Norwich. He was saying that Norwich are looking for a total restructure on the pitch in the summer. So maybe they just didn't have the faith anymore that Alex Neil was going to be the man to take them on. But interesting summer coming for them.
It is an incredibly old squad that he's got there, and I think the previous transfer dealings that he's done, I had to look at it this week to see if he had any history of bringing through young players, and it doesn't seem to be there. I think people might who saw him Hamilton was where he was manager of. Didn't really have a great record at bringing through the younger players. Was a man that trusted experience. So whether or not that's the other problem with the great prospects that have come out of that Norwich Youth Academy, I think they just need someone that can harness them a lot better.
And I don't mean to gild a lily, but I do think Gary Rowett would be a perfect fit for Norwich, with Josh Murphy, Alex Pritchard, and Cameron Jerome up front as a bit of a target man, a la Clayton Donaldson at Birmingham. Chris, I wanted to ask you on the relegation picture. Clearly, some big teams are involved in it this year. We've got Wolves in it this season, as well as Blackburn and Wigan. But two names that are now slap bang in the middle of it for me are Nottingham Forest and Birmingham City. Simple question. Do either side realistically have to worry about going down? And which team do you think's got the best chance of going down?
Well, between Forest and Birmingham, I mean, Wolves. I think Forest, weirdly, have probably got the most, because the Birmingham thing, if they were happy to sack Gary Rowett when he was arguably achieving par, or getting them, was it fourth? I think they were at the time that he was sacked. Surely they won't have too much of an issue getting rid of Zola if this run carries on. So who they bring in? I mean, it'd probably go for like Sven-Goran Eriksson or something stupid, knowing them. But yeah, I think Birmingham are in trouble. But Forest, they just look like a club that is just sliding effortlessly down the table. If we assume, well, Rotherham are gone, aren't they? Let's be honest. Wigan, you never really know what you're going to get with them. Blackburn, I think that if you look at their form, what is it, 3 draws and 2 wins from the last 5? I mean,
I believe
it's not
he's
good.
4 unbeaten, Tony Mowbray.
It's not great, but he seems to have done that steadying of the ship type of thing. So I mean, that's good enough for them for the time being. Bristol City, I never really know what we're going to get with Bristol City. I can never really predict. But Forest and Wolves, I mean, Wolves, was it 3 straight defeats until the recent games? Maybe their form is upturned. But with Forest, as I say, I look at that squad, the amount of players they've let go. It seems rotten. The fans seem to be completely against everything that they're trying to do. They've got some good players, but look at that run they've got coming up. Derby, that is a derby, isn't it? Next weekend, followed by Preston away, followed by Wolves away in that midweek, which is obviously going to be a huge game depending on how Wolves' fixtures turn out the next few weeks. Then they got Huddersfield, who are chasing promotion, and then they got home to Blackburn, who we've just mentioned. I mean, that's arguably 5 huge games. I genuinely think if they don't win at least 2 of them, they are going to be one of the favourites to drop for me.
Certainly an argument to be made, because I think the teams around them are certainly strong enough to get the points, but Nottingham Forest have been so hit and miss for so long now. They do need to rely on Ben Brereton, and I don't think that's entirely fair on him. For me, personally, I would say Birmingham are in real trouble, because I don't know where their points are coming from. They go against all these teams, and they just don't look strong enough to get even a goal, let alone a point. They do have Rotherham and they do have Burton to go on their run-in yet, but I really do fear for Birmingham. Before I hand back to you, Chris, I did also want to ask one question to Josh. Pep Guardiola this week said that he wants more English talent in his Manchester City team, but he's afraid of being priced out. Rumours abound that Manchester City...
Sorry, I had to laugh at that. Sorry, carry on.
Rumours abound that Manchester City are in for Ryan Sessegnon. Clearly this weekend he would have done himself no harm with 2 very good goals and the possibility of a hat-trick if that bloody penalty had gone to him. Can you think of any other youngsters in the Championship? Because the 2 I look at immediately would be Ryan Sessegnon and Ben Brereton, but do you think there's any chance of them actually going for them? Because I don't think they'd start.
No, is the first thing. I can see them signing Sessegnon and doing what they've done with Patrick Roberts, who went to Celtic. Obviously, they signed him on the basis that he'd be... Is he now at Fulham? I know he went to Celtic, didn't he?
He was at Fulham. He's gone to Celtic via Man City.
Gone to Celtic since. Okay. So there's a prime example. Signed a player. He wasn't ready. Off he went. Taking out my bias towards Guardiola's methods and my thoughts on how he sort of plays the game, I'm not buying that statement one bit. I think that's I think it's complete nonsense, to be perfectly honest with you. I think he's saying the right things, and I think it's a classic piece of Guardiola media spin for me. I'd like to sign these players. Well, it didn't stop him signing John Stones, did it? So I think that's a lot of waffle. I think there's a certain player in Arsenal's midfield that will probably be in Manchester City's midfield next season, in Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain. I think he's quite keen on him, and I don't think Arsenal would charge over the odds to get him. As for players in the Championship, I think there's more likelihood that they would go after someone like Dembele at Celtic than go for a Ryan Sessegnon at Fulham. And my fear would be if they went for Ryan Sessegnon, however talented he is, I don't see a 16-year-old getting into that Manchester City side. Particularly, he's a wide forward, isn't he, Sessegnon, or sort of a wide...
He plays as left back, but he plays all the way down the wing. He's a flying fullback, is what I call him.
Okay, so I mean, yes, City do need fullbacks, but I just think that if you're Manchester City and the stature of the club they are, and no matter what Guardiola says about being priced out, I'm not having that. They aren't being priced out of signing anyone in the world. Let's be perfectly honest. I still think Ricardo Rodriguez will end up at Man City as their left back next season, which solves the problem. And even if they sign Ryan Sessegnon, I don't think a club of that stature could go into any game against a top opposition, a Chelsea, an Arsenal, a Spurs, a Man United, with a 16-year-old left back. I can't see it, because he would be targeted every single week. And John Stones, I mentioned him already. What's the one player that everybody targets when they play Man City? John Stones. So I don't think that's a... If it is a starter, and it does happen, I don't see him playing. Let's say that much. I think he'll go on loan, and it'll ultimately be a bit of a waste of time. So I hope for the kid's career he sticks around at Fulham for another season, or at the very least he goes to, dare I say it, a West Brom, a Stoke, a club where they're going to, let his talent develop a little bit slower, rather than going to a big club where he's ultimately not going to play. So that would be my thoughts. But I have to repeat again, I think that statement is utter nonsense.
I would largely agree, but yes, Josh, any thoughts?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things to look at this with. I would actually disagree. I think they've got to buy a lot of players and rebuild that defence this summer. And I think with the total transfer kitty they've got, I think they will be overcharged rather than priced out. Certainly overcharged for players that they want to get hold of. Could they get hold of Sessegnon? I think they will, because they'll need a first choice and they'll also need a promising option in there, because they've got Sagno and Zabaleta at the moment as options, both well into their 30s and both really need replacing. The players I'd look for them to go for, it's quite difficult at the moment. I think if they were going to get anyone from the Championship that I think could improve them, it's going to be a bit of a left field one, but Pontus Jansson, I think, would be the player. They need someone who can talk a man through a game, in someone like John Stones, who could play alongside him. But otherwise, I think when this piece of, when the press broke on Guardiola making this comment, the first thing I then put out is, well, what are you doing with your £200 million investment in your youth academy? That's
Great
where
point.
your young English talent should be coming from. That was what the Sheikh said they was going to do. Sheikh Mansour was like, we want to develop our own talent. It doesn't matter if they're English or not. What you actually need is homegrown talent, and you can be from anywhere to be classed as homegrown. And you've got this wonderful stadium, and you've got this wonderful training facilities, and you've basically put a huge amount of infrastructure into the Manchester area. And Man United aren't in the best will in the world. They're not looking at youth anymore. They're going out getting experienced players, and the youth team has kind of fallen by the wayside. I think it was only really Louis van Gaal that was going to really give any youth a chance. With Jose at the helm, there's no way anybody's going to get there. So they've almost got the freedom of Manchester to pick up the young English talent or young local talent and put them into their youth academy. And I think that's where they should be looking, and they shouldn't be looking to try and get the talent externally, because it's a damning indictment of their own what they've been spending on their youth academy. If they don't think anyone there is good enough, what have they been doing? And perhaps that's what they need to be looking into.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's some good points and well made arguments for and against. I think the one thing I would probably say let's make a pact. I vote by the close of the transfer window in September, Manchester City will have signed no players from the Championship and a lot of A-class Premier League talent from Europe. There we go. Putting it out there.
I can personally see them stockpiling, like Chelsea do. I think
True.
Ryan Sessegnon is in danger of that. I think he's certainly a player that Pep would like, but I'm much of the opinion of A, you, Chris, that they wouldn't play, so what's the point? And B, you, Josh, that they really should be looking at that youth academy, because there are good players in it. I know Shea Facey is a fullback that is quite highly thought of, but he's not going to be getting a game anytime, I don't think. So some definite questions to be asked, but certainly some interesting quotes from him. I do wonder if he's been looking into the Championship, because Rafa Benitez has already said that he thinks there's English talent in the Championship that should be in the England squad. So.
Yeah, it is one to keep an eye on, and as I say, I remain to be convinced, but it might happen. I might be wrong. It does happen quite a lot, actually. It's sort of really more than I care to admit, in fact. But it could happen. So we'll stay abreast of that and see what gives at the end of the transfer windows. But yeah, for now, I'll remain sceptical. That's all I shall say. Right, okay, well, we'll finish with a couple of questions then, because we've had a couple of good questions in from you, the listeners. First of all, I have an apology to make, a grovelling, on one knee apology. It's to our good friend Jake Bayliss. Jake has come up with an excellent idea. It revolves around what he's going to do with a blog for us, which he's going to do on a weekly basis, because we've been saying for a while we don't get enough blogs out. So Jake is going to do a blog which he's going to call the Hipster's Choice, which is slightly different from our regular podcast Hipster's Choice, in that he is going to select what he calls the Hipster's Choice of fixtures for the upcoming weekend and then put a blog together. Now the plan is we want to try and release these in an ideal world on like a Thursday evening maybe, so you can have a look. So if you're not a particular follower of Bundesliga, Liga, La Liga or Serie A, you can pick out a game which Jake will have a look at and maybe highlight. And at the same time, you might also be able to pick out a game. Last week he picked out a Championship game and a Premier League game as well. So It's a really good idea. I'm really keen on the idea that Jake's come up with. And as I say, I apologise, Jake, wholeheartedly. I did a 68-hour week at work last week, so I just didn't get round to putting it together. So my humble apologies. But as of next week, assuming Jake doesn't hate me, we'll try and get those out. So look out for those. We will tweet them when we get them out. So Jake, I'm sorry, but it's all Ross's fault. He made me do it.
Right.
So hopefully next week. But while we're here, let's get these questions asked. So first one comes from Pat D, at Pat D24. That's a new name on my list. So I imagine I think it's a she, is a fan of Sheffield United, because she simply wants to ask, Sheffield United, are they going to win the league? Who wants that one? Ross, let's give that one to you. Do you think they're going to win the title?
I think you'd be foolish to bet against them. They are 8 points clear at the top now, and I can't even think of the number of games they're unbeaten. Fleetwood struggled this weekend against a very rough and ready Bolton Wanderers side that are desperate to go up automatically as well. I think Sheffield United have kind of brought together the perfect storm this season. I think they've been down there for 5 years, maybe one or two more, and they just keep chopping and changing managers and chopping and changing the front line especially, and nothing's really stuck together. But this year they brought in Chris Wilder from Northampton, who, I think I read a stat this week, he's only lost 7 of his games in charge of Northampton and Sheffield United, something ridiculous like that. So I can't bet against them, and they've been in fantastic form, and frankly it's a long time coming. I've got family in Sheffield, so it's always nice to see the Sheffield teams doing well, and I'm personally looking forward to seeing them back in the Championship.
Yeah, I do think they've got everything necessary to come back up. So yeah, I think, Pat, they get my vote as well. So we shall see what happens, barring any major issues. I think they'll be back in the Championship.
They need
season.
A Norwich scale collapse to fall out. I don't think there's any danger of them going up, but as champions, I think they're kind of sorted as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, this one comes from Lachlan at Arcadius. Arcadius? Yes, I think that's Arcadius. Are Everton a chance for the top 6? Josh?
It's a difficult one, because I've been saying I'm pretty sure Man United have got that locked down. Everton they've played 28 games, and they're kind of top of that league of everyone that's played 28 apart from Liverpool. Everyone else having a game in hand above them. I think Man U would, I think what they are now, it's something like 16 or maybe 18 games unbeaten. So they're on a pretty good run, but they can't seem to... Everton have only really been able to close the gap because Man U haven't been playing games and have been doing other things in competitions that have meant that, they're missing out on game weeks in the Premier League. I think their 2 missing games are against Arsenal and Southampton. I think I'm right in saying. I think that's who the 2 game in hands are against. So I think, it's going to be tough for Everton to break Man United into getting into 6th. I think 7th is probably where they're going to end up, because they are a bit isolated in the table.
I think they'll be all right. Top 6. I do. I don't know who their remaining fixtures are completely, but I think it will come down to how they sort of see out the season.
7th would be Europe, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah, true.
With the Capital One, the EFL Cup gone, and now with essentially the final 4 being in the top 4 of the Premier League, they're going to get 7th.
It also depends on how they do away from home. I think that's a big thing for Everton. At home, I never really worry about them. Away from home, I think you can get at them. So, and of course, as much as I chuckle to myself at times, the fitness and form of Romelu Lukaku is going to be key as well. Because if he gets a knock, much like Spurs and Harry Kane, I think that could have a massive issue of their season. So, I think they'll be right.
They do have to go away to Old Trafford on the 4th of April, so that's probably where we'll find out their final position in the league, because they've got some difficult fixtures. They play Liverpool the weekend before, and then Man United midweek. So I think that's probably where we'll find out where they'll end up.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I think it's a good season no matter what for Ronald Koeman, because it had a bit of a dip, but he seems to have picked things up again, and tried his best to keep an even keel. Be interesting to see if Barcelona do come sniffing or not. 2 other questions. One from Tom, our good friend Tom at 5 Star Flips. He's back. Hi, Tom. Why do you guys think we've seen a decline in English teams' performances in Europe over the past few years? That almost strays into the main podcast. So I'll just get a sentence from you both, really, just a short sort of version. Any sort of thoughts on this? Ross, do you want to start us off?
Because the golfing quality in the Premier League has shortened, and a lot of teams are in the same boat, and we don't have a winter break. So games are being played at a faster pace, more pressure put on the players, and then they don't get the time off over Christmas, whereas the other European countries do. So for me, it's predominantly the winter break.
Sums up my thoughts pretty much exactly. Josh, anything different?
I would say I think there has been a transition in the last 10 years for the type of player that has been able to dominate in Europe, and those players aren't necessarily at the teams in the Premier League anymore. I think when we look at when English teams were dominant without a winter break was about 10 years ago, when we had the Chelsea and Man United, battling away for the Champions League every so often, and it wasn't a surprise to see 3 teams into the last 32 from England. But as you say, that was over 10 years ago that we saw that, and I think football has just changed a little bit in the way it was played, because they were all very powerful midfields, and Barcelona came along and ripped up the rule book with Xavi and Iniesta in the midfield. And I think the Premier League have been so busy trying to replicate that Barcelona team, they've lost what was good about English football and what was successful about it, and that's why I think they've dropped off in Europe. And it's not necessarily a winter break issue, more of a, it's always a thing that we've got with England. You can see the national team always want to be something that they're not, and I think it's the same with the club structure as well, that they all want to be something that they're not really destined to be set out to be, and they should look at carving their own journey.
No long ball, no party is what we're basically saying. So I jest, but yeah, good question, Tom. Thank you. Thank you very much for that one. We'll finish with this one from Lee Betts. It's another new name, actually. I haven't seen Lee's name before, so welcome, Lee. He's an 18-year-old Chesterfield fan. It's nice when we get people who support some of the clubs further down the football pyramid. So I hope you're well, Lee. He's at Lee AA Betts 1998. That's a mouthful. Assuming Newcastle and Brighton go up, who do you see going through the playoffs? You can both have a go on this one, because I know this is a question you can both answer. I'm going to kick my feet up, and let you ramble away. So go on, Ross, off you go.
Well, I know you're going to say Fulham, so there's no point asking you.
Of course.
Assuming that Brighton go up, and I'm starting to worry about Brighton at this stage, I do have to admit. I'll put it this way. If Huddersfield go up automatically, I don't think Brighton win the playoffs. I think Leeds do. If Huddersfield stay in the playoffs, it all depends who finishes 6th, though. It really does. It changes the complexion of the whole top 4. I don't think Reading will. I think Reading are still a bit too flimsy in places. 49 goals scored, 49 conceded. I think that's not going to set them well for the playoffs. Leeds kind of know they're going to be in it at this stage. They've got a few more boxes to tick, but they kind of know it, and they're always the most dangerous teams. I picked Hull last year because they knew they were going to be in it, and then they eventually won it. Leeds have got that build-up to know that, all right, we're not going to get top 2, so let's just get ready for the playoffs. But Huddersfield have been just so good and so relentless. You have to question whether or not they're going to burn out at some point. But if it's Newcastle and Brighton in top 2, I would... right now, I'd say Leeds, but it changes so quickly in the Championship. It's difficult to know for sure. But also depends who gets 7th, because I don't think Preston would win it if they got into the playoffs. But they are a rough and ready team. They will push people around, and there's a lot of footballing teams in the playoffs this year, so they would be an outside bet as well. But yeah, I think for me, if it's Huddersfield up automatically, then Leeds. If it's Brighton up automatically, then I would have to say Huddersfield.
Ross has got splinters in his bum. Josh?
I think the table is going to look very similar in the order it currently is, especially the top 4. So that, I think Brighton will go up automatically. They're generally okay with, they generally bottle the top rather than bottle from the chasing pack, put it that way. But I think I do want to say Leeds, but looking at fixtures and the run-up into it, Reading have got some... I know there's no favourable fixtures in the Championship, but I think the time they have to play Wigan, and I think Burton as well, I think their seasons will have been decided, and I think that would be enough for them just to have a nice run-up and get some decent form into the playoffs. And I think Reading could be that team that gets through. But for what Gary Monk is doing at Leeds, they are set up to go up.
Fair enough. Okay. Lee, do you want a straight answer, mate? Because these two have just fudged their way through. It's Leeds. Okay, that's all you need to know. Leeds are going to go through the playoffs and win it. So don't take any notice of the two that watch the Championship on a weekly basis. Listen to me. I am the Oracle, and I'm saying Leeds. Or maybe Fulham. Or could it be Huddersfield? No, Leeds. There you go. I joke, of course.
It's certainly not Derby, anyway.
No, and before we go, we should touch on this. Josh, we have some breaking news, which you can both have a little say on. So Derby County, manager Steve McClaren... Oh, he's not anymore, is he?
No, I think the chance of Gary Rowett going somewhere has riled a couple of feathers in the chasing pack of those outside the playoffs. And I think they wanted to get their... everything in place, but after watching Derby play Brighton on Friday night, they were god awful. I don't think I've seen a team play so badly in the Championship this season, and I've seen Rotherham play and Burton, and they were they just didn't care. There was no fight in them at all. I don't think the players that he'd brought in January has really helped him. I think I'm going to throw this back to Ross because I think it's absolutely insane that he has gone, but it's just a very strange time of year to do it, and perhaps they would have waited to the end of the season unless they knew something about who they wanted to get in the summer, potentially going elsewhere into somewhere like Norwich.
Any thoughts, Ross?
Only that it's typical Derby. They do this every season. When he went back there, I know Darren Bent was quite vocal about it, and he said that the Derby players were actually quite surprised because it ended quite acrimoniously with Steve McClaren, so they were a bit surprised to see him come back. They had the new manager bounce, they went on a fantastic run. Tom Ince was dragging them through games by himself. Now they've kind of fallen away again, had a bit of a rough run a bit. I think it's 4 points out of the last 9 off the top of my head. So it doesn't overly shock me. Derby are that kind of club that will see them slipping a place at the wrong time of year and think, crap, we need to change this now. With Norwich sacking a manager, like Josh said, you kind of get the feeling that they've now got a bit of an itchy trigger finger and just thought, maybe they're going to go in for someone that we were eyeing up at the end of the season, so they've made the change now. Because let's not forget that Warburton is also available, having left Rangers, or maybe they want Alex Neil, I don't know. But yeah, the timing never surprises me with Derby County. Doesn't overly shock me that Steve McClaren's gone. It was more of a surprise that he went back there. But who takes it on now is a massive, massive decision, because they can't go on like this. I don't think they'll ever go up through the playoffs until they've had at least a full season with someone. You know, whether they finish in the playoff that year or not, they won't go up through the playoffs until they have a settled manager for at least a year to build a team there, and they just can't seem to settle on anyone. So they are as much of a Leeds United as we've now got in the Championship, because Leeds have kind of found their manager and are sticking with him. Derby just change so often that the next one has to be the last one, you know, regardless of whether he's there for 3 years in the Championship or 1 year and they go up to the Premier League. It has to stop, and they have to start building a team. And I think Rowett is a good enough choice. You know, Tom Ince is someone that he'd enjoy working with, much the same way he did with Damari Gray. But yeah, whoever they take on, they just need to stick with.
I wonder if Derby have got an itchy Alan Pardew finger. I don't know.
Outside shout, isn't he?
I was going to say, I don't know why. I just, like Pardew's reputation has been a little bit tainted recently, and I just wonder if he might fancy taking the drop down. He wouldn't drop down to a club that hasn't got not any opportunity to go up. That's the wrong thing to say. He won't go to a club that is mid-table. He'll only go to a club that's challenging, or that has a suitable size stadium with a suitable ambition that matches his, shall we say. But I could imagine Pards rocking up at a Derby or even a Norwich. Actually,
I think personally the Norwich team is set up better for him, because we already know that he plays a 4-2-3-1. That's essentially his MO. I think Norwich are better set up for that, but there's no reason he couldn't do it at Derby, because Derby will throw money at the problem like they normally do.
Yeah, Mal Morris and his Candy Crush money. Is it Candy Crush? I think it is, isn't it? Okay, well, there you go. See, Football Hipsters podcast, breaking news, so you don't have to. Right, we will wrap it up there for this week then. Just a quick plug, as usual, for the regular podcast, which will come out. It will be a day late this week, giving you all a heads up in advance, people. I have a meeting to go to tomorrow night, so we will not be able to record on the Monday, so it will be on the Tuesday. No Drew for the time being, because he still has to work, so that'll be me and John fudging our way through Bundesliga again, unless we can get a guest, so stay tuned for that. We're not sure about Gav at the moment, because he's also self-employed, so hopefully we'll have Spanish Gav back on, but we will keep you posted. So just a reminder then, the regular podcast will be out on the Wednesday this week, rather than the Tuesday as usual, so look out for that. And as usual, as we say every week, check out our partners, classicfootballshirts.co.uk. Have a look at the range they've got going there. Find yourself a shirt, find yourself a bargain, and purchase it. And obviously use our promo code to get yourself 10% off as well. Ross, we have a special lined up. You, myself, and Josh, and anybody else we can pull out of the woodwork. We might be able to find somebody else who wants to talk a bit of EFL during the international break. We're going to be doing a special, aren't we, for the EFL, and mainly for the Championship, it has to be said, but we'll probably slip a bit of EFL and talk in there as well. So yeah, anything you want our listeners to send you in? Anything you're particularly looking for a little bit of chatter before we record that one in a few weeks' time?
Well, any questions that you have going into the run up to the final end of the season, more than welcome to fire it our way. Leagues 1 and League 2 as well. I've done, in my opinion anyway, I've done a pretty good job of learning Leagues 1 and League 2 the past campaign, so I got a decent grasp on that. If you've got a question for any of the 3 leagues we cover, then more than welcome. And especially if you want to speculate on how Birmingham and Norwich are going to be doing, then yeah, join the club, because they are fantastic talking points at the moment.
Yes, very much look forward to that recording. And as I say, we'll give you plenty of reminders nearer the time, because it's still a fortnight away, but we will be recording that during the international break, or just before. We'll probably be releasing it in the international break, so that you guys and girls have got something to listen to. So do tune in for that. Right, that will be it for tonight's podcast then. Thank you very much for listening. As usual, we appreciate it. Give us a little thumbs up on YouTube, subscribe on iTunes, leave us a review if you've got 10 minutes, and of course, SoundCloud as well. We have a lot of listeners on SoundCloud, but nobody ever gives us a love on SoundCloud. I'll be honest, I don't even know what it means, but it sounds good. So if you click the little heart icon on SoundCloud, it might do good things, or tickle me in the right way. I don't know. I don't really know. But yes, please do that, and let us know what you think of our content, if there's anything you'd like us to add. But until next week, we will leave it there. Thank you very much to Josh and to Ross.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And until next week, we have been the Football Hipsters. Keep it tuned to ourselves. Get those questions in nice and early for next week, and we will speak to you very soon.